Hello, security pros. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on today's ESA webinar, Revolutionizing Access Control Deployment with 02.3BT PoE. During this webinar, you will learn how to leverage 802.3BT 4P PoE to power access control with Altronix Tango PoE-driven power supply chargers delivering 12 VDC and 24 VDC simultaneously, with live PO4 battery backup. This game-changing solution harnesses the new IEEE standard, eliminating the need for high voltage inside the enclosure or dedicated conduit and wire runs, providing tremendous savings. I'm Daniela Chavez, ESA's Marketing and Communication Specialist, and I'm excited to lead this webinar today. Before we dive in, I'd like to provide some tips for those of you joining us on your first ESA webinar. Welcome. You will be muted for the duration of this session, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. If a question or comment comes to mind at any point during today's session, click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and I'll ensure that we save some time for your questions with our experts today. We will also be recording this webinar so you can re-watch the on-demand session and share it with your colleagues. Tomorrow, you will receive an email thanking you for your attendance today with a link to the recording. If your company is a member of ESA, we thank you, and we hope you're utilizing your benefits to save, expand your team, and get connected to the ESA community. If you're not yet a member of the Electronic Security Association, check us out. ESA is the largest and longest standing association serving the pro-installed electronic security and life safety industry. Our members are integrators, dealers, monitoring centers, and even manufacturers and service providers in the space. You'd be surprised at the power an ESA membership holds for your company. Get a feel for all the ESA benefits, including savings on business insurance, training, customized in-house onboarding, and professional development programs, peer networking groups, government advocacy programs, certifications that satisfy state licensing, and in some cases are also alternatives to NICET at esaweb.org. One of our membership specialists would be happy to walk you through these benefits and the application process. We at ESA realize your time is valuable, and we appreciate you spending some of that time with us today. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Ronnie Pennington. Ronnie is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps. After the Marine Corps, Ronnie pursued an opportunity as a contractor for the United States Department of State, installing access control and video surveillance in the U.S. embassies abroad. Subsequently, Ronnie joined the private sector as a lead installer, working on installations such as the National Institute of Health, AstraZeneca, and AI DuPont, installing video and access control systems. He then went on to pursue technical sales and marketing career as an area manager in the Mid-Atlantic region with Security Solutions Incorporated, where he represented leading manufacturers, including Altronix, for over 6 years. In 2011, Ronnie was appointed National Accounts Manager for Altronix and is responsible for providing sales and engineering support to the company's reseller partners, integrators, consultants, and end users. Ronnie has been directly with Altronix for the last 12 years and is currently the Sales Director for America. So without further ado, Ronnie, please take it away.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the entire ESA team for putting this together. My name is Ronnie Pennington, and today I want to talk to you about revolutionizing your access control deployments using PoE. Altronix, if you don't already know, is the security industry's global leader in power and data transmission solutions. We have proven reliable solutions for over 40 years, providing access control, surveillance, and fire solutions for power and data. The industry's most renowned customer service support, which is award-winning, and a lifetime warranty on all of our products. Our global headquarters is in Brooklyn, New York. Now, getting right into Power over Ethernet. What is PoE? So Power over Ethernet is a method of safely deploying electrical power along with data over Ethernet cabling. So many people refer to it as category cabling. Heard of it as category 3, 5, 6, even up to 8, category 8 cabling. So PoE, power source, is referred to as power sourcing equipment, or a PSE. This type of PSE, power sourcing equipment, has an output voltage between 44 and 57 volts DC. So most people think of PoE as just 48 volts. That's the nominal voltage, when the actual voltage is between 44 and 57. PoE enabled piece of equipment is also known as a powered device, more commonly referred to as a PD or an edge device. So an IP camera, PoE camera, illuminator, PTZ, those are considered PDs, powered devices. IEEE is the body which has the standards for PoE. Initially, starting with 802.3 AF, it included power over Ethernet up to 15.4 watts. And then that expanded into 802.3 AT, which is up to 30 watts of PoE. And now, more recently, we have the 802.3 BT up to 90 watts of PoE. And to avoid damaging non-PoE devices, the key component of IEEE standard is detection. So basically, there's a handshake that is performed between the powered device and the power sourcing equipment. So if the powered device does not require power, or the device on the other end does not require power, that handshake is not met and power is not sent down the line. This is simply done with a resistor in the device. So now let's talk a little bit about the history of PoE. So in the late 1990s, manufacturers first began working on proprietary versions of sourcing power to Ethernet devices. And then in about 2000, Cisco systems began shipping products to power their IP telephones from an Ethernet cable. Around 2003 is when we saw the first power over Ethernet standard from IEEE come out. It's 802.3 AF. And again, that was up to 15.4 watts. And then about 6 years later, we saw the standard of 802.3 AT. Now that we had these phone type systems that were drawing power and other devices drawing power, including IP cameras, the motorized systems and other devices that wanted to draw more power, they wanted to consume more so that they could perform more functions. And that's when the 802.3 AT standard came out. And then other manufacturers said, well, okay, there's different ways of deploying PoE because there's 4 pairs in that category cable, and typically the power and the data were on 2 pairs. Let's take advantage of this and let's do 2 30-watt outputs. And that's where the 802.3 BT standard started coming to fruition. So in 2013, the IEEE approved a project for 802.3 BT for high PoE, PoE++. So when you have manufacturers that were showing high PoE 60 watts on their cameras or on their devices, at that point, they weren't quite a standard yet, but what they were doing was using the 802.3 AT standard twice. So they were using it on the spare pairs of the cable and on the data pairs of the cable, giving you 30 watts each, calling it high PoE and giving you 60 watts. So that's where IEEE said, well, we need to do something about this and see what we can do. And then that's when that project was started, considered 802.3 BT. And in 2018, the IEEE issued the standard for 802.3 BT, starting with category 5E. And that allowed you to do 4-pair PoE. That's what 4P PoE stands for. It's 4-pair PoE, where we deploy PoE over all 4 pairs of the cable. And technically you can go up to 100 watts, which most devices do the handshake at 90 watts. So what are some of the benefits of PoE? There's installation cost savings. It eliminates the need for an electrical outlet in the installation right next to the device, or eliminates or reduces the AC power adapters that are needed. It also reduces cabling associated with and associated labor. It's plug and play. So now I can run a category 6 cable or category 5E cable along the same cable trays and pathways as the regular data cables. It simplifies installation using a single Ethernet for both data and power. We have a centralized backup with the UPS. So now your power sourcing equipment gets plugged into a UPS or has battery backup built in, or is connected to generator power, which is typically in the IT closets. And then remote device power down during periods of low usage for security. So we have safe power. We can unplug the cable from the unit and there's no power on the line. Where if with analog power, if you were connected to a standard 12 or 24 volt DC power supply, if you were to remove the cable, you still had 12 or 24 volts DC or even AC on the end of that cable, depending on the type of power supply. So with PoE, that handshake is not there. It's not going to deliver power down the cable. And it's pretty safe that you're not going to have power at the end of the cable. So you don't have to worry about damaging non-PoE devices. And if you're servicing it, you can safely power down the unit just by unplugging it. 4P PoE driven access control. So with 802.3 BT, the new standard of 90 watts, what we were able to do is we're able to harness that higher output power and bring it into newer devices. So we already have PoE IR illuminators, PoE PTZ cameras, and other devices that are starting to use that BT standard, that 90 watt BT standard. So 4P PoE driven access control power, these new devices in the access control market, they have utilized PoE for ease of deployment, right? So now we have mid-span injectors, there's PoE switches that now can deliver this 90 watts of 802.3 BT power. So whether it's PoE lighting, powering an access control system, strikes, cameras, this higher wattage allows for those bigger devices, more motorized type of equipment to be powered, giving you more flexibility and for a lack of better words, and no pun intended, more power in your system. So the future of access control, the Tango 1B, is a 4P PoE driven power supply. So 4 pairs, you have your Cat 6A coming in. Typically, we like to use Cat 6A because there's less heat dissipation in the line and there's less loss of power on there. So at 100 meters, you can get 72 watts available out of your power supply or to your device. So 90 watts comes from the power sourcing equipment. You do have about an 18 watt loss because the device will consume up to 72 watts. There's different classes of PoE. So you have up to class 8. Most devices either draw 51 watts or 72 watts of power when it comes to the 802.3 BT standard. So these advancements in PoE technology are opening the doors for access control. So with the Tango 1B, what we can do is we have this 802.3 BT, we can deliver up to 90 watts of power in. And then for the output, we reduce that down to a regulated 6 amps at 12 volts DC or 3 amps at 24 volts DC. The beauty of the new plug and play options that we have for access control when it comes to the Tango 1B is that when we receive that PoE input of up to 90 watts, as you can see on the right-hand side, there's 2 sets of terminals that we can deliver both 12 volts DC and 24 volts DC simultaneously. There's also a power and battery supervision terminal, so we can monitor that the power input and the batteries are connected onto the unit. And the battery charging circuit is set up to do LiFePO4, lithium iron phosphate battery charging. If you notice on the left-hand side, you have your PoE input and you also have your data pass-through output. So basically, we know that you're going to have another device, whether it's an access control board or a security burglar alarm board or another network device inside of that enclosure is what you're typically going to have. So instead of having to run 2 home runs of Cat 6 cable, one for the data that you're going to connect to the access controller and the other one that has the PoE to power the Tango board, we could just pass that right through with a single cable. Now we can connect to the access control board and we can pass that data through, leaving just a single cable deployment on there. And then the last feature that I want to talk about on here is the 8-pin connector, which enables stacking with compatible multi-output power distribution and access power controller boards. So we'll get more into that 8-pin connector and how that works here in a little bit. But I want to touch a little bit more on the LiFePO4, the lithium iron phosphate battery charging. For those that don't know what lithium iron phosphate battery charging can do for you, there's a lot of advantages of doing lithium iron phosphate battery charging. So you have a longer use life of battery. We can do up to 5,000 times as far as duty cycles versus 500 of a sealed lead acid battery. So depending on the battery manufacturer, it's anywhere between 2,500 duty cycles to 5,000 duty cycles for a lithium iron phosphate battery. The cost per cycle then gets greatly reduced when you have that many cycles available to you. It's much lighter weight than a sealed lead acid. It's probably a third of the weight, if not half the weight of a sealed lead acid battery. Other features include efficiency. So you have a more efficient battery backup type system, longer shelf life. You can have these on the shelf for up to 10 years without having to recharge versus a sealed lead acid is 6 months. More uptime. With a lithium iron phosphate battery fully charged, say you have a 7 amp hour lithium iron phosphate versus a 7 amp hour sealed lead acid, you have about 40% more uptime with the lithium iron phosphate, because what happens is on the discharge process on a sealed lead acid, the voltage starts to drop dramatically, lowering the life of that sealed lead acid battery and the length of time that you actually have for backup. When it comes to lithium iron phosphate, it maintains that voltage throughout the discharge process and it cliffs right off. If you're used to using your cordless drill and it's running, and then all of a sudden it dies, the same thing happens with Life PO4. So inherently, lithium iron phosphate batteries have low power disconnect built right into them because they're a smarter battery. And then these also work better in colder temperatures. Going back to the Tango 1B. So PoE power provides selectable 12 volt and 24 volt power simultaneously for access control. It saves valuable enclosure space. It's quick install via 8-pin connector. So going back to that 8-pin connector, we have sub-assemblies such as the PDS-8 or the ACMS-8 or the ACMS-12 now, where they can stack right on top of this Tango 1B. So with the 8-pin connector, what happens is you bring your 90 watts of PoE into the unit, and then you can select by output by stacking the, say, the PDS-8 right on top. You can stack it right on top, and in between each fuse, you have a jumper where you can select 12 volts or 24 volts by output from that one power supply. The PDS-8s and the ACMS-8s and the stackable subassemblies, they all provide individually selectable outputs, and they also have bicolor LEDs, so you can visually see what output you have on there. So whether you have 12 volts DC or you have 24 volts DC to get visual verification of the voltage. With Tango 1B, we eliminate the need for a high voltage connection right at the power supply. So traditional access control would have you put a power supply such as the AL600 ULX or ULXB inside of a Trove enclosure, all depending on how you have your setup going. But that power supply requires 115 volts high voltage going into it. So with Tango, we eliminate the need for that high voltage connection inside the enclosure. It also prevents you from having to have such things as lockout, tagout, and depending on your jurisdiction when you're performing service. You're going to use low voltage cabling and installation methods. These low voltage cablings, the category 6A, category 6, you're going to be able to run that in the same pathways and cable trays and conduits as your other data cables. So multi-purpose cabling is the same, like I said, in the raceways and low voltage cables. You can run them all together. And then the unique design features a Tango solution saves time and money on battery service and maintenance. So let's talk about the power sourcing equipment. So from Altronix, we have the Netway Spectrum, the Netway 1BT, which is a single port PoE injector that provides up to 90 watts. We also have the Netway 4BT, which is a 4-port injector, giving you a total of 360 watts, 90 watts per output. So every output could have the full 90 watts. And then we also offer the Netway 8BT. The Netway 8BT has a total of a 480 watt power supply, meaning you could have up to 5 outputs at 90 watts each, leaving you some remaining to power other devices such as cameras or other lower consumption PoE items. Things to note about the multi-port units, the Netway 4BT and the Netway 8BT, is that we have battery charging. On the back of each of these units, you'll see a battery charging circuit. That is a 48 volt DC battery charging circuit so that you could charge up to 4 batteries in series. It also has link technology, so you can monitor the health of the unit as well as do control of some of the PoE outputs. So if you wanted to shut PoE outputs off or turn them on, you could do that via our link technology. And there are also UL 294 listed for access control for those installations requiring UL listings. Altronix also offers the RE2 rack mount battery enclosure. So as you see here, this rack mount battery enclosure, you're looking at the back of the unit. We can just wire the batteries to the connectors inside the unit. And then on the back, you can wire the series parallel on the back of the unit. So that way you don't have to do it inside the enclosure. The cover comes easily off with 2 thumb screws, and you can replace the batteries as needed should you need to do so. The RE2 accommodates up to 4 12-volt DC 7-amp-hour batteries. It stands at 2U and a 19-inch rack. And the terminal blocks, like I said, facilitate the ease of wiring. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier that the NetWave 4BT and the 8BT have is our link technology. So with link, we can control, monitor, and report power diagnostics from anywhere. We can see the battery health. We can manage multiple devices at multiple sites with our dashboard software. We can report system diagnostics via email or our link dashboard. We can control the outputs and reset devices if necessary. There's an event log that tracks the history of what's going on inside the unit. We can see the unit temperature, and we can also monitor the inputs and outputs of voltage and current for each individual output, depending on the device that we're using link with. So whether it's the NetWave 4BT or the 8BT, with those units, we can see individually how much power is being pulled off of each output. So if you do have a 90-watt device, and let's say the devices that you're connecting really are only drawing about 45 watts, you will see on the software that it's about 45-watt draw there that's happening. So we have the rack mount applications when it comes to the NetWave 4BT and 8BT. So 4BT, you have your rack mount application with the RE2, as you can see there. And from there, we can just deploy our cameras, our access control. We have a connection going from the battery charging circuit to the RE2, and then the Ethernet connections, just data going from the switch to the NetWave 4BT, and then we're injecting the PoE power to be able to power those devices. Here's a quick chart calculation of an access control system. So imagine that you have a Trove 1 enclosure, you're doing a few Mercury boards. Mercury seems to be the most popular access control type of board out there right now with 27 OEMs. So we'll concentrate on that application right now. If we wanted to do a 16-door access control system, so for example, this Trove 1 that you see here, that is 4 doors. We have a Tango 1B in there with the PDS-8 and an ACM4. We are powering an EP1502, which is the main controller for Mercury. And we're also powering an MR52, which is the daughter board. Including that, we have 4 card readers, we have 4 electric strikes, and 4 request to exit motions. And we're also doing battery charging. In total, we're drawing 44.2 watts, 0.25 watts from that. So clearly the Tango 1B can provide up to 72 watts of power. There's plenty of room in there to power those 4 doors. Now, if I have a NetWave 4BT, I can add another enclosure and another enclosure and another enclosure. And with 4 Ethernet cables, I'm powering a 16-door system here, each drawing about 45 watts, let's say, rounding up there. And clearly there's enough room if I needed to add a mag lock on one side or for 1 door maybe, or if I needed to had higher current draw card readers, whatever it may be, I still have room for adding a few things if necessary on there, as long as I don't exceed that 72 watts of total power. So on our website, we do have tools to help you design the system. So if you go to application support on altronix.com and select Tango System Design Calculator, you can easily go in and you can put in a quantity, description, and current draw and select whether that current draw is in amps or milliamps and what voltage, and it will calculate the power draws for you. So as you're putting stuff in, so in this example, we're doing a different access control system. We're putting in what each current draw for each device is and the quantity of those devices, and it's calculating the total wattage, and we can see this total system power draw, and it'll show us whether a Tango 1B is capable of powering all those devices off a single Ethernet cable. Speaking of Trove, Altronix works with more manufacturers than any other manufacturer in our industry when it comes to integration with access control. As you can see from our Trove design tool, here's the cover page. We work with all these manufacturers plus more on here. We also have capabilities of putting systems together with blank back planes that you can customize on your own using our mounting magnets. So in this scenario, we're doing a trove with Software House. So what you can do with the trove design tool is you can go in and select the manufacturer that you're working with, the size enclosure you want to work with that we have, and then you can drag and drop these boards inside of the enclosures. And once you do that, you can select power supplies, sub-assemblies, however you want to do it. We can get a bill of materials at the end of it, and we just have to turn that over to our distributor and get them to quote it for us. So as you see on the right-hand side, you have a complete list of everything that you need with quantities from each of the manufacturers, whether it's Altronix or if it's from Software House where you have to get those devices. In a 32-door access control system using Software House, here we have an iStar GCM and an ACM. We have 8 readers, we have 8 locks, 8 motions, and an ACM S8. And as you can see, in each one of these, we're drawing 54 approximately watts, and we can do 32 doors in total. Altronix also offers Tango in a traditional application type product like you would normally find an AL600 ULX or a 600 UL ACM or a 600 PD8. Here we do it with Tango. So the Tango 8P is 8 individually selectable 12 or 24 volt DC aux power supplies. So you can do it simultaneously, both 12 and 24 volts simultaneously out of this. In this application, the Tango 8A, this is with an ACM S8. Again, 12 and or 24 volts DC switch power with fire alarm disconnect. So this is relayed outputs. And then we also offer the Tango 8AP, which offers both the access control, the ACMS8 and the PDS8 in there, which each individual output on both the ACMS8 and the PDS8 are configurable for 12 or 24 volts DC simultaneously.
Typical access control systems require high voltage AC input power to deliver low voltage to system devices, controllers, readers, and locking devices. Providing dedicated high power voltage adds cost and labor when deploying systems. Introducing Tango from Altronix, the industry's first UL294 PoE-driven power supply charger. Tango installs safely and easily by any qualified low voltage technician, greatly reducing the cost of ownership. Eliminate the high voltage contractor along with dedicated conduit and cabling, providing for a safer service environment. 4 PPoE provides up to 90 watts per port and can be used for powering access controllers, locking devices, multi-sensor cameras, PoE lighting, and more. Altronix has redefined access control by harnessing the IEEE standard from any 802.3BT injector. Tango transforms PoE to 12 and 24 volts DC simultaneously. Tango by Altronix is a plug-and-play option for your next access control installation, powered by Altronix Netway single or multi-port PoE injectors. Tango utilizes the same footprint as other Altronix power supplies to conveniently mount in a wall or rack mount configuration. Easily combine access power with controllers from the industry's leading brands. Tango uniquely stacks with compatible Altronix power distribution boards and access power controllers, saving valuable space and increasing capacity. As an added benefit, Tango charges a single lithium iron phosphate battery to keep your system up and running during an emergency. Simplify your next access installation with Tango from Altronix. For more information, please visit altronix.com.
So, in summary, Tango allows you to leverage 4 PPoE to deliver power for access control. You can utilize low voltage cabling and installation methods to save time and money. And the unique design of Altronix power sourcing equipment provides battery backup at the IT rack, saving time and money on battery service and maintenance. Here's our team, our outside sales team directly at Altronix. You have me, which I cover the Americas, and also directly cover the Mid-Atlantic down to the Southeast. And then you have J.R. Andrews, who's our national sales manager, and he covers Canada and the mid-central states. Stephen Oliva is our West Coast regional manager, and then Steve Stetner is the Northeast. Are there any questions at this time?
Awesome. So Ronnie, it seems that we do have two questions. I'll go ahead and get started with the first one. It says, can the Tango 1B board be installed in any Altronix enclosure, wall or rack mount?
Yes, just about any enclosure. So our mid-size enclosures, say starting with the BC 300 size enclosure all the way up to our Trove 3 type of enclosure. Yes, it has the same mounting footprint. Wherever you can mount an Altronix power supply, like an AL600 or 400 type power supply, that has the same mounting footprint and hole pattern as the Tango 1B. So we can mount that in any enclosure where you can mount an Altronix power supply, whether it's wall mount or rack mount or even outdoor type of enclosure.
Okay, awesome. The second question I have here is, I saw that there is a stacking option with Tango. What are the benefits with this?
That's a really good question. So the 8-pin connector allows you to stack with other distribution boards. So the PDS-8, the ACMS-8, we now have a PDS-16 and an ACMS-12, our Link 8 ACM and our Link 8 PD distribution boards. They all have that 8-pin connector as well, and you can stack them right on top. So with the 8-pin connector, what happens is now the voltage gets passed through the 8-pin connector, so it gives you both 12 and 24 volts DC on those outputs, and it makes it selectable. So that 8-pin connector, by stacking it with other distribution boards, it frees up space for more power distribution. It frees up space inside the enclosure, and allows you to expand the system without having to go to another type of enclosure. And this can save a lot of labor and equipment costs, and it allows you for a higher capacity type system.
Okay, cool. And then I do have a third question here, and I hope I do pronounce this properly. Any plans to add the 12A HR battery option in a 3U drawer?
Gotcha. No, I got that. Okay, so right now we haven't come out with a rack mount battery enclosure for larger battery capacities. We just most recently came out with 2 enclosures, typically used with our Trove 3, but can be used on any enclosure. And these are wall mount type of enclosures. So the Trove 3 BWC will allow for 18 amp hour batteries as far as height goes. So I believe you can put somewhere between 6 and 8 18 amp hour batteries in that enclosure, and that's the Trove 3 BWC. And if you were using it with a Trove 3, it would mount underneath, say, a Trove 3, and the knockouts line up and all that. We also have the Trove 3 SWC, which is also used with Trove 3, but it can be used with other enclosures or just as a battery enclosure if necessary. The Trove 3 SWC comes with shelves where you can actually put up to 4 40 amp hour batteries in that enclosure. So as far as battery capacity, we do have enclosures for wall mount currently. Rack mount, we're still at a 2U for the rack mount in the 7 amp hour size. I'd have to check out the weight on the 12 amp hour batteries for a 3U to see if we can go to a 3U or not.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. So let's see. I think we have one more question. It is, does Altronix have a mobile app that allows you to unlock and relock doors?
We don't have a mobile app. Our Link technology is a software that is used in our Link 8 ACM and Link 8 PD. And certainly you could go into that software and remove and add power to one of the relays. In a more traditional sense, the access control system is more likely going to have an app that allows you to lock and unlock doors. Being that we're the power supply portion of it and not the actual access control system, we can control the power, but we can't control the access control system as far as allowing for locking and unlocking of doors. But if you can control the power, you can do it. And it's not in an application, it would be web-based. Going on your phone or your tablet, you could go into to the website. If knowing the IP address of where that unit resides, you'd be able to do it that way. So maybe in the future, we'll have a mobile app, a Link mobile app that we can monitor everything through the mobile app, but currently it's web-based.
Awesome. All right. There aren't any further questions so far. We do have a little bit of time left. If you want Ronnie to elaborate on anything else, we can definitely do that, or end the session right here, but the floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the focuses that we had with Tango in this session was for the deployment of access control with Tango. There's other ways to use Tango, not just for the access control. So wherever you need 12 or 24 volts DC power, think of like a big box store type or a warehouse type situation where maybe you need to put multiple Berg panels around the warehouse, not exactly going back to a closet, but maybe you have to mount it up high. How do you get the high voltage power so that you could plug your burglar alarm panel in halfway through a warehouse? It would take a lot of conduit or Romex, and it would take a dedicated circuit on the electrical panel. If you have category 6 cable, it's much easier to run. If you have an electrical license, that's great. But if you don't, then you would have to hire an electrician to pull that Romex, put that conduit in, put the high voltage cable in, so that you can plug that burglar alarm system. Whereas with using Tango, we could easily just mount a Tango right next to the Berg panel that's in the middle of that warehouse, run a Cat 6 cable from power sourcing equipment using the same cable trays as the other low voltage or data, and then plug it in. And then now we can power the entire burglar alarm system using a single Cat 6. And you'll be able to put it on the network as well, because now you can have that pass-through data that goes to your Berg panel as well. So just another way to use the Tango 1B. There's many uses for it, but once you start thinking about how you can use it and deploy it and thinking outside the box, you'll realize this is a really versatile power supply, and it's not going to take a whole lot for me to deploy it.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that concludes the webinar for today. No other questions have come through, but like I mentioned earlier before we started the webinar, this video will be available on demand on ESA's YouTube channel. So you'll be able to find more information there as well, and on the Altronix website also. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Ronnie?
Not at this time. I just want to say thank you very much to everyone. And if anybody should have anything, please feel free to reach out to Altronix. And we thank you for your support.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much today, Ronnie, for this awesome webinar. And thank you to everybody who joined. And we will see you guys soon.